So hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while since I last posted, so let's get straight into it. I'm going to talk to you about a very sensitive topic today. Fragrance addiction. Where do I start with this? So let's just get into it. What is it? Why it exists? So in my opinion, is when, just like any other addiction, it starts as, as a consumer, you start buying one or two bottles. It gets to a point where your collection, like in front of me, is just not enough, and you keep building, 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 and this never ending plot or gap you think that exists in your life when it comes to smelling good. You think, I need to buy more bottles. I need to buy one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. It gets to a point where there's no limits. And, you know, I just wanted to touch on it today. There's different aspects to it as well. So you've got one perspective is I'm just a consumer, just like myself, frag head. I love perfumes, fragrances. I just want to smell good, yeah? Okay, I get that. But the other end of that spectrum is, you know, I want to touch on this as well, is perfumery is an art. So before I get into addiction, let's just discuss it. Some people like myself genuinely appreciate perfumery as an art. Yes, it's a hobby collecting, but I appreciate the art. That's the reason probably why I actually collect more bottles. But having said that, the flip side of that is you have to realize, going back to what I originally out with, is if you know you're spending more than you need to on a fragrance, which in my opinion, they're not worth all the money. For example, this one, YSL Baby Cat, it cost me like £230 on discount. It's a lot of money that you're committing, and you have to understand that at the end of the day, who are you actually buying it for? You're not buying it for her, him, your friends, your family. You're buying it for yourself. So in reality, when people, buy it for compliments, that shouldn't be your main focus, or because it's hyped up, it's a niche, it's the next best thing. Remember Bianca Latte? What a flop. So you have to remember, you're buying it for yourself, and there is only so much you can do to smell good. At the end of the day, no one's going to really care about it. That's the truth. Like when I spray this, for example, I'm not spraying it to get a compliment from you, with all due respect. Couldn't care less. I'm doing it for myself. The compliment is a bonus. So you have to remember, how many bottles can you realistically collect and gather to the point where you have, for example, let's say 20 to 50 bottles. Are you realistically going to actually ever use them? No. So that being said, there needs to come to a point where you have to admit to yourself you may have a major problem. And I've actually been through it myself with fragrance addiction. So it started out one, then two, then three, and just got to a point where I felt they were all lonely. Like they needed some company, right? They needed some, travel buddies next to each other, in the wardrobe, sitting next to each other. My God, it sounds like a Toy Story, right? My God. So the point I'm trying to make is you don't need that many bottles. That's one way I would say to definitely counter it, to like tackle this problem. You don't need that many bottles. And also, whilst we're at it, this is a topic no one really speaks about. And I think there has to come to a point, you have to realize that it's a serious problem. If you're spending above your means for the sake of smelling good, you know, why? You can smell good literally with 5 to 10 bottles. This is literally my collection. That's all I have, excluding one, which I think is in my gym bag, but I'm not going to bring that one up because I've already reviewed it. But that's around 13, 14 bottles. Let me answer my own question. Do I need that many bottles? No. Honestly, you don't need more than even 5 to 10. Maximum. Maximum. Because what started out as a hobby becomes an addiction, and then after addiction, it becomes a problem. And next thing you know, your bank balance is becoming broke just because you have an obsessive compulsive issue of buying more and more bottles. You don't need that many. You don't need to have 50 to 100. Because when you think about it, how many days in a year? 365. Are you realistically telling me you've got so many bottles, you're going to spray one for each day? Then how are you supposed to enjoy the actual ones you actually like? And that brings me to another point. Buy something you actually love, not just like. I've got a lot of bottles in front of me, right? There are some of them genuinely out there. For example, this one, Altain. Do I love it? No, I like it. Like is a very, safe word. Love is a very strong word. I love it to the point where if I loved it, I would have kept it, and probably buy another bottle. But I won't be. After this one's finished, adios, my friend. It's gone. He's out of the Toy Story collection, unfortunately. So that's it. That's the reality. I just don't think you should, kill yourself for the bottle, you know. And that brings me to our kind of final point, you know. If it's a hobby, that's fine, you know, I get it. But you have to draw a line, you know, and think to yourself, have I got an actual issue? Because I've been there, you know. I was up till like, I think 3, 4 a.m., you know, researching bottles on Fragrantica, you know. There needs to be a point you need to learn to control yourself, because at the end of the day, it's just smelly water, you know. And at the end of the day, if you're doing it for yourself, you're not doing it to impress anyone, you know. You think anyone cares? I'm wearing baby cat. No one cares, because you're the only one probably sat at that table caring the most. It's your life, it's your obsession. So you need to learn over time. That's fine to collect, but if you're spending to the point where it's hurting you financially, mentally, and there's always a void when you look at your bottles because you don't ever spray any of them, then you realize you have an issue, you know. But like I said before, if it's just an art in your eyes, that's fine. If you genuinely appreciate perfumery like myself as an art and collecting for the right reasons, no problem, you know. Who am I to judge, you know? But just what I want to, you know, touch on this topic, because I think there's you know, more than a few sides to it. And you need to understand that everyone gets into fragrances for different reasons, you know. uh, like myself, you know, I genuinely do love them. I'm not doing this for clout or any of that stuff, you know. I love my fragrances. There are some of them, unfortunately, I would sell, you know. I think the Gucci Oud and Altain, I've had the option, but you know, just start small and just take it easy, you know. At the end of the day, you don't need an excess amount of bottles, guys, you know. Who, honestly, when are you going to spray them? You know, I'll finish on this. The amount of influence out there, right? Many, I'm not going to mention names, but how many of them, when they sell you what Bianca Latte, Louis Vuitton Imagination, all these overhyped bottles, and tell you it's the next best thing, you buy it, you're buying it out of, you know, pure ego, you know, panic buying. You don't need those premium bottles. I'm telling you, you buy a few bottles, you're good. These guys, you have to be careful, you know, they've been paid to say this stuff, you know. There's a bit element of bias in their wording, you know. They're trying to make sure that you buy their products. I'm not here to sell you anything. The only thing I'm here to tell you is my opinion, and this is how I see it. That's the reality of it. You know, you gotta be careful. Social media is also the reason why all of us are getting all hyped into the fragrances. You know, so just, you know, be realistic, be rational, and think to yourself, you know, do I need that many bottles? And if you don't, then you can survive on literally 2 to 3 or even 5 tops. You know, so that's just my opinion. I thought I'd, you know, give my take on the subject, and I'll see you next one, guys.